I remember pointing the tip of the gun against his head and I pulled the trigger. Boom. For the first time in my life, I felt that I was free.
Hey everyone, I'm working toward 1 million subscribers, so if you could hit that subscribe button, I'd be incredibly grateful. Thanks so much. Now let's dive into a story that's both heartbreaking and shocking, a tale of survival, trauma, and a desperate act that divided a nation. In 2015 in the United States, a tragic story unfolded, one that would shake anyone to their core. It's the story of Ashley Martinson, a young woman who endured unimaginable horrors. Ashley was born on March the 6th, 1998, though the exact location of her birth remains unknown. Her mother, Jennifer, became pregnant at just 23 years old, and from the start, life was anything but easy. Shortly after Ashley's birth, Jennifer separated from Ashley's biological father, a man whose violent nature made him a danger to both of them. His identity remains largely hidden from public records, but his actions left a permanent mark. Ashley never saw him again. By the time Ashley was 9, her mother had entered into a new relationship, one that would make her daughter's life a living nightmare. The man Jennifer welcomed into their home was a monster in disguise. He threw things at Ashley, burned her skin with cigarettes, and subjected her to unspeakable abuse. Before she even turned 10, Ashley suffered the worst betrayal imaginable. Her stepfather sexually assaulted her. Years later, in a heartbreaking interview, Ashley revealed how her mother's boyfriend took everything from her. But the suffering didn't end there. This man didn't just abuse Ashley, he also tormented Jennifer. He would beat her, scream at her, and degrade her in front of her daughter. Yet the most gut-wrenching part of Ashley's story was the betrayal by the one person who should have protected her, her own mother. According to Ashley, Jennifer knew exactly what was happening. She knew the abuse her daughter endured, and yet she did nothing. In fact, she actively enabled it. She even sent this man into Ashley's room at night under the guise of tucking her into bed, only for him to commit acts that are beyond comprehension. For 2 long years, Ashley lived in terror, with no one to turn to. Then finally, Jennifer left him. But any hope of a better future was short-lived. Ashley's mother had a history of choosing dangerous men, and her next partner was no exception. When Ashley was a teenager, Jennifer married a man named Thomas A.E.S., a deeply troubled individual with a violent past. He brought 3 daughters from a previous relationship into their already dysfunctional household, and together, they lived in a small, isolated home in rural Wisconsin. Thomas had a criminal history that painted a chilling picture. Charges of assault, domestic violence, and even kidnapping. One particularly disturbing report revealed that Thomas and his ex-wife exposed a 13-year-old boy to graphic acts, treating it as some kind of twisted lesson. Though Thomas claimed he never physically harmed the boy, his actions showed a terrifying lack of morality. Despite his violent record, some members of Thomas's family insisted he had changed. His sister, Sandy, described him as a man who had worked hard to turn his life around, finding steady work in construction and, in her words, becoming a good man. But Ashley and his daughters knew the truth. Thomas hadn't changed. He had simply learned how to hide his darkness. Inside the home, Thomas's cruelty knew no bounds. Ashley recalled him killing baby animals in front of her and her step-siblings, sometimes just for sport. In one horrifying instance, he choked the family dog, threw it against a wall, shot it, and then fed its remains to a bear. He ruled the household through fear and violence, making sure everyone knew that defying him came at a painful cost. Verbal abuse was constant. Physical abuse was a regular occurrence. If Jennifer ever argued with him or disrespected him, he would beat her without hesitation. His own daughters weren't spared either. On at least one occasion, Ashley's younger stepsister was strangled until her face turned blue. Ashley's way of coping with the unfathomable horrors of her past and her ongoing torment at home was through a form of dark expression. She created an online alter ego, Vampire Chick. In this persona, she poured her pain and creativity into the shadows, using her art as an escape from the cruel reality she was trapped in. She designed her own website, a place where she shared macabre stories about vampires, serial killers, and tales of twisted minds. But it didn't stop there. Ashley also penned eerie, haunting poetry, with titles like Murder Madness. In her chilling words, she revealed a side of herself that was dark, raw, and filled with anguish. Lines like, "I can hear nothing but their screaming souls," sent a shiver down the spine of anyone who read them. She painted vivid pictures of monsters, gore, and madness. One post read, "They say one of us is to blame. You're holding that knife covered in blood. I'm laughing off the pain, wondering which one of us is guilty if we're both totally insane." But no one in Ashley's life, friends, family, or classmates, had any idea of the depths of her inner torment. To them, she was just a typical shy girl with a troubled home life. Her escape was school, though even there, the constant weight of her situation never fully lifted. She felt suffocated by the tyranny of Thomas's rule, and she feared for her mother's life. Deep down, she felt something terrible was about to happen, and when it did, she didn't want to be there to witness it. By late February 2015, Ashley had had enough. She began planning her escape, and her boyfriend, Ryan Daniel Sisko, 22 years old, was going to help her. They were going to flee together. But everything came to a head on March 6th, Ashley's 17th birthday. On that fateful morning, she had to watch, yet again, as Thomas brutally attacked her mother. The screams that followed were ones Ashley would never forget. Her mother's cries were like the sounds of someone fighting for their life. In a fit of rage and desperation, Ashley grabbed her phone and started messaging Ryan, telling him how she hated both her mother and Thomas. She described in graphic detail how she fantasized about killing him, about grabbing one of his many illegally owned guns and blowing his brains out. It was a chilling, raw cry for help, filled with pain and anger that had been building up for years. The very next day, March 7th, an explosive argument erupted between Ashley and Thomas. In a fit of rage, Thomas discovered that Ashley had been in a relationship with Ryan. When he found out Ryan was an adult, his fury was uncontrollable. In a violent outburst, he demanded that Jennifer lock Ashley in her room, isolating her from the world. No school, no job, nothing. He would make sure she was confined, controlled, until she obeyed. But Jennifer, for once, took a different approach. She told Ashley that if she wanted to leave, she should just go. With her heart racing, Ashley packed a bag and set off on foot to her friend Jonathan's house. But Thomas wouldn't let her get away that easily. He followed her in his truck, cornering her and forcing her back into the vehicle. As they drove home, Thomas told her in no uncertain terms that it was in her best interest to stay. But Ashley, broken and desperate, felt trapped in a nightmare. She was suffocating, her freedoms ripped away, her every move controlled by the man who had terrorized her family for years. Back at the house, Ashley made a brief detour on her way to her room. She walked past Thomas's gun collection and, without hesitation, grabbed one of his loaded shotguns. She retreated to her room, sat on the bed, and for a moment, she contemplated the unthinkable, using the shotgun on herself. But as she sat there, she realized something. She didn't want to die. She didn't want her life to end in the same suffocating cycle of abuse. Instead, she thought of Thomas. He was the one who needed to be silenced. The sound of Thomas's footsteps grew louder as he made his way toward her room, shouting and banging through the house. He didn't realize that Ashley was ready. As the door burst open, she pulled the trigger. The shotgun blast hit him in the neck, sending him flying back into the hallway, blood spraying from the wound. Ashley didn't stop there. She followed him out into the hallway where he lay, bleeding heavily. Standing over him, she placed the shotgun's barrel against his temple, and with one final chilling shot, she ended his life. Brain matter and blood splattered across the walls, a grotesque realization of the dark thoughts she had shared with Ryan just the day before. But the nightmare didn't end there. According to the three younger girls, Jennifer ran toward the sounds of gunfire. She was horrified by what had just transpired, but Ashley, in that moment, wanted nothing more than comfort from her mother. But what happened next only deepened the horror. Instead of embracing her daughter in her time of need, Jennifer rushed to Thomas, tending to him as he bled out. When she realized he was dead, she turned on Ashley. She grabbed a hunting knife and attacked her own daughter. A violent struggle ensued as Ashley and her mother fought over the knife. But Ashley, in her state of blind rage, managed to overpower her mother. What followed was a vicious, uncontrolled frenzy. Ashley stabbed Jennifer repeatedly, slamming the knife into her mother's body with such force that it fractured her bones. There were at least 35 stab wounds, and even after the fatal blows, Ashley continued to stab her mother in a frenzy, unable to stop herself. In the aftermath, Jennifer was left unrecognizable, her life violently taken by the very daughter she had failed to protect. The evidence was clear. Thomas was a violent, horrific man, and Jennifer had allowed Ashley to become a victim of his abuse. After the bloodbath, Ashley threw the knife, still stained with her mother's blood, onto the floor, the handle tangled in Jennifer's hair. She then gathered her younger sisters, leading them to one of the bedrooms and giving them food and juice to last a few hours. She wanted to make sure they were safe before she left, before everything she knew was destroyed. After a final shower to wash away the blood, Ashley fled to Jonathan's house, just a mile away. She stayed there briefly before slipping into Ryan's pickup truck, and the two of them headed to Tennessee, hoping to escape the past and start a new life with a distant aunt. But the orange juice and food she had left for her sisters wouldn't last long, and soon the devastating reality of what had happened would hit the younger girls. They would be left to piece together the horrifying truth of what had become of their family. March 8, 2015, just one day after the horror unfolded. A frightened young girl picked up the phone and dialed 911. But the moment the operator answered, she hung up. She did this again and again. The sisters were terrified. Ashley might still be inside the house. If she heard them calling the police, who knew what she would do? Typically, when multiple 911 calls come from the same location, dispatchers act fast. But in this case, tracking the calls took longer than usual. The family's home was in a rural area where the phone signal was weak. Hours passed before the eldest daughter finally gathered the courage to stay on the line. When she did, her words sent chills down the operator's spine. She reported that her stepmother and father had been murdered. The crime scene was beyond gruesome. With this information, a heavily armed team was dispatched immediately. They knew there had been 3 children inside, a shooting had taken place, and the shooter might still be there. When officers entered the home, what they saw was nothing short of a bloodbath. One officer described it as absolute chaos, blood smeared everywhere, brain matter scattered across the upstairs. A captain on the scene noted that the violence was fueled by extreme rage. As they moved cautiously through the house, the police finally found the 3 sisters, huddled together in one of the rooms. The girls, still shaking, revealed the terrifying truth. They had heard 2 gunshots. Then, a brutal fight erupted between Jennifer and Ashley. Ashley won, and then she ran. With that revelation, Ashley became the prime suspect. It didn't take long for police to learn that she had fled with her boyfriend Ryan in a truck. The chase didn't last long. Ashley and Ryan's journey ended in Indiana, where officers swiftly arrested them. At the police station, 2 things became immediately clear. 1. This wasn't just a case of a teenager killing her parents to run away with a boyfriend. There was a dark, traumatic history behind Ashley's actions. 2. Ryan had nothing to do with the murders. When questioned, Ashley denied everything. She insisted the police had it all wrong. In a stunning twist, she claimed it was her mother, Jennifer, who had pulled the trigger, killing Thomas in a desperate act of self-defense against his abuse. Ashley said that by the time she ran upstairs, she found her mother standing over his lifeless body, gripping a shotgun. Then, according to Ashley, her mother turned on her, screaming accusations. A fight for survival ensued. But there was a problem with Ashley's version of events. Her sisters didn't back it up. And when investigators dug deeper, they found something chilling. Ashley had planned her escape. They uncovered messages she had sent to Ryan, including one where she fantasized about blowing Thomas's brains out. Faced with undeniable evidence, the pressure mounted. Eventually, Ashley cracked. At first, she claimed she had only gotten the gun to use on herself, but that story didn't hold up either. Ashley was charged with 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide and 3 counts of false imprisonment for trying to lock up her sisters. As her trial approached, she made a bold move, writing a letter to the judge. In it, she shockingly stated that although she had offended her sisters, they were better off now that their father was gone. To many, this was an audacious, even chilling statement, one that made her seem completely remorseless. Since Ashley was just a day over 16 at the time of the murders, she was tried as an adult. In her initial hearing, she pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. Her defense argued that she hadn't planned the killings and that her severe mental health issues should be taken into account. She entered an insanity plea. To determine the validity of this claim, 2 expert psychiatrists, one for the defense and one for the prosecution, examined Ashley. Both diagnosed her with PTSD and major depressive disorder, stemming from years of abuse and trauma. But there was a crucial problem. Both experts agreed that despite her trauma, Ashley knew what she was doing. She understood that her actions were wrong. Her insanity plea was rejected. Initially, prosecutors pushed for a 40-year sentence, but as the trial progressed, they offered a plea deal, reducing the charges to second-degree intentional murder. On March 11, 2016, Ashley accepted the deal. 3 months later, on June 10th, her sentencing hearing began. The court listened to emotional statements from victims and arguments from both the prosecution and the defense. Thomas's 2 eldest daughters described him as kind, funny, and loving. But this starkly contrasted with their earlier statements to police, where they claimed he was often violent. The state argued for a minimum 20-year prison sentence, plus maximum supervision. They pointed out Ashley's lack of remorse, her conflicting stories, and the horrific nature of the crime. The prosecution acknowledged her past trauma, but they made one thing clear: murder is not an acceptable response. The defense, on the other hand, focused on Ashley's young age, the severe abuse she endured, and her history of mental illness. They urged the judge to consider that she had never committed a crime before. The defense pushed for just 8 years. The judge weighed everything: her age, her trauma, her capacity for rehabilitation. He even stated that he did not believe she posed a risk of killing again. But in the end, he settled on 23 years in prison, followed by 17 years of supervised release. Since her imprisonment, Ashley has taken steps to turn her life around. She completed her high school diploma and has spoken about finally feeling safe behind bars. In a rare interview, she told a reporter, "I'm not a monster. I never meant for this to happen." She insisted she had made a terrible decision, but that didn't mean she was the evil person the media painted her to be. In 2017, she appealed her conviction and sentencing, but both were denied. Then, in 2019, while still incarcerated, she started a relationship with someone outside of prison. That person now runs a website on her behalf. Perhaps the most unsettling moment came in January 2020, when Ashley made a public post on her website. I'm not in prison because I'm a dumb criminal, she wrote. I'm here because I had a bad day. For many, that statement was deeply disturbing. This case remains one of the most controversial of its kind. Some believe Ashley was a victim of her environment. Raised in a house filled with abuse and neglect, she reached a breaking point. They argue that her traumatic past played a significant role in her actions, but others see it differently. They point to the brutality of the murders, her cold and calculated escape plan, and her apparent lack of remorse. One haunting question lingers in the minds of many. Would you want someone like Ashley living next door to you? What do you think? Was Ashley a victim of her circumstances, or should she be held fully accountable for her actions? Let's know your thoughts in the comments below. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into true crime and human stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.